Gentlemen, good morning. That's better, okay? Good morning. Thank you for joining this, the 123rd Annual General Meeting of the British Standards Institution. My name is John Hurst and I am Chairman of the Board of BSI. I'm going to do something in completely reverse order. I've been asked by the caterers, I'm serious, to remind you when you go out for lunch there are two stations, one at each end of the hall outside, and I'm so sure I'm going to forget to remind you at the end that I'm doing it right at the beginning, okay? Two stations, one at each end. Beyond that, I'm delighted to welcome you to the AGM, those present here today at the Royal Garden Hotel in London and those who are joining us online. In addition to the formal resolutions, the AGM is an opportunity for the board to engage directly with the company's members and provide an update on BSI's activities. Following the success of the approach last year, we continue to hold the AGM within the Standards Conference to encourage members' attendance and participation in this key element of the company's governance. And it really is a great pleasure to see so many people here today. We'll begin the AGM with a presentation by BSI's Chief Executive, Susan Taylor-Martin, here, covering the group's activities and impact in 2024 and looking ahead to 2025. This will be followed by a presentation by Director General of Standards Scott Steedman on the theme Strengthening the Relevance and Impact of the National Standards Body. After the presentations, I and the rest of the board will be pleased to answer any questions you may have. If you are joining us online, this may be done by submitting your questions in writing via Teams. Messages can be submitted any time until I close the session. Questions sent via Teams will be moderated before being sent to me on this screen here to avoid repetition, but they will not be edited or changed. Please give your name and organisation when you are submitting a question. Also present here today are my non-executive colleagues on the board, and I'm going to ask them to wave to indicate their presence. Not now. Just wave. Robert MacLeod, Senior Independent Director and Chair of the Remuneration Committee, Polly Curtis, Chair of the Sustainability Committee, Tim Livett, Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, Diane Bitzel, Non-Executive Director, and Alison Wood, now waving, Board Advisor. And I'm particularly pleased to welcome Diane to this, her first AGM at BSI, as she joined the board late in 2024. As a number of individuals have recently come off the board, at its meeting yesterday, the board approved the following additional appointments. Paul Quested, Executive Director and Chief Financial Officer, and Paul is there. Welcome, Paul. And not here, but joining us shortly, Bookie Bird, Non-Executive Director, and Peter Simpson, Board Advisor. We are also joined today by members of BSI's Standards Committees, representatives of BSI's Policy and Strategy Committee, individuals from BSI's workforce, and representatives of a number of BSI's advisory firms. I'd like to give my personal thanks for the time and dedication that all of these groups give supporting BSI's important work. I'm now going to hand over to Chief Executive Susan Taylor-Martin to give an overview of the group's activities in 2024 and its prospects for 2025, and she will speak after we run this short video.
Since our founding, we have driven the development of standards that have shaped industries and ways of working, strengthened supply chains, powered global trade, and accelerated positive change at scale. Our independence, our people, our passion, and our commitment to integrity and excellence set us apart. At BSI, we have remained resilient and adaptable in the face of change and uncertainty, embracing new opportunities and evolving for a stronger future. Our purpose is clear. We deliver positive impact for our clients, stakeholders, and society. Together, we are building trust in artificial intelligence and empowering digital transformation, enabling robust climate action on the journey to net zero. ensuring quality and safety in products and organisations, inspiring innovation, bringing life-saving medical devices to market, and prioritising people for a fair society and sustainable world. We have the power to make a lasting impact. Together. BSI, your partner in progress.
Fantastic. Great. Well, let me add my welcome to John's. Wonderful to see you all here. And on behalf of my colleagues at BSI, the group leadership team, many of whom are in the front row just here, and the board, it's my pleasure to share with you the progress that we made last year and what we are looking forward to when it comes to the years ahead. Now, as in previous years, I'm going to talk about BSI and the big, and then I know many of you will be extremely interested in Scott Steedman, who's going to talk next, our Director General of Standards, and he's going to really talk about the world of standards and all of the great progress that we've made there in 2024. So, agenda-wise, I'm going to start with purpose, because that's very much the foundation and it is what drives what we do. And I'll talk a little bit about our highlights in terms of performance, both financial, but also especially in terms of impact. And then I'll touch on the year ahead and what that looks like. So, to purpose first. We are a purpose-led organisation, impact for a fair society and a sustainable world, and we believe that impact is achieved through our clients and stakeholders, including all of you in the room. That's very, very important. It's a very collaborative process there. And what does that mean? That means we can help businesses deliver better products and services and run better, safer, more productive organisations. It means that standards can help government deliver better policy, because standards can be the transmission between policy or regulation and actually practical delivery on the ground at scale. And then standards which are multi-stakeholder and global can really accelerate progress on some of our biggest global issues, whether that's climate change, whether that's removing modern slavery from the supply chain, whether that's delivering safe and ethical AI. And we fund all of that work, that impact work, our purpose, with our commercial performance. So that's why I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. So let me start with some of the highlights from 2024. And to be frank, there is just so much to be proud of. It was quite difficult to distill everything onto kind of a slide, and it's much too wordy, so apologies. Let's see if that isn't moving yet. If you could move that slide on at the back, please. Perfect, thank you. So tons to be proud of. I've tried to categorise it in three important buckets. So I'm going to talk about impact, because that's what starts off our purpose statement, and that's a really big shift that we're making. And then I'll talk about the business delivery of that impact, and then follow up with what we're doing from an investment perspective. So the big thing that we really achieved in 2024 is when I stood up on this stage last year, I talked about impact. But the shift that we've made is we're really taking that abstract concept and starting to really make that real. And there are a number of ways that we've really done that in 2024. And most important for me, because I think it's very systemic, is the fact that in our standards shaping process, we're now introducing impact right at the beginning. So what's the impact of that standard? How are we going to measure the impact of that standard? Incredibly important, and we're tracking to make sure that every BSI committee has indeed got an impact statement that they're trying to deliver against. The reason I'm even prouder of the team that have delivered that is the fact that ISO, having seen this very good idea, thought, you know what, we should do exactly the same. So the fact that that's going to be replicated at an ISO level is absolutely fantastic. And it actually points to the second comment around impact that I wanted to make. We are carrying on in that great British tradition of British standards, really. So this is the hotbed of standards innovation. Those then go up into the ISO world. We've got two great examples of that kind of happening at the moment. One is the work that we did on menopause and menstrual health, helping organisations really make a difference there. And by the way, already our most downloaded standard ever. And already we estimate about 7 million women around the world are benefiting from some of the changes that organisations are putting in place. So fantastic, and a real shout out to Jane Packer and the team there. So fantastic work there. The other one is around the ISO net zero guidelines that are becoming an ISO standard now. So again, we talked about that in a previous meeting about the guidelines, but phenomenal that that is now going to become the world's first verifiable net zero standard. And again, we want the UK, and we're very much hoping that the Minister is going to kind of espouse this. I can see Alexia in the background there. But the Minister really kind of taking ownership of that, because it's a fantastic, it's not just soft power from a British perspective, it's really hard change accelerating power. So fantastic from that perspective. And then keeping on the sustainability theme, one of the things I think we've got better and more strategic relationships across government, but particularly top of mind because we were in Parliament last week celebrating the work that the team at BSI have done with DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and a whole set of nature investment standards. Again, I suspect Scott will talk about this in a little bit more detail, but really important. It's a global first for the world. Wonderful. And another example, I think, of something that will go through up into the ISO world. We're also working with Innovate UK, and clearly absolutely critical is the role that standards can play on accelerating growth. And the work that we do with Innovate UK is exactly that kind of impact. It's providing SMEs access to standards and training, and it helps unlock growth potential, because whether you're using technical standards to become part of a much larger organisation's supply chain, which they obviously do, or whether it's participating in international trade, and again, standards are essential. Remember, standards underpin 80% of global trade. So if you want to trade internationally and grow your business, it's very important to kind of make sure that you've got the right standards. So all of that, I think, moving that kind of impact, as I said, I think has gone from the abstract into the very real, and we're starting to really measure our impact there. If I move to impactful growth, and as I said, this is where I think where the business delivery, as it were, of impact, a lot of really great work. We talked this time last year about all of the investment that we're making in AI, and last year we became accredited as a certification body for the ISO AI standard, Management System Standard for 2001. We certified our first clients. We are progressing towards becoming an AI notified body. We've got a suite of AI training, algorithmic auditing, and dataset testing services. So all of this under the banner of safe and ethical AI. Incredibly important work that we've made real strides on in 2024. On sustainability more broadly, this time last year I talked about something called the Net Zero Pathway. Now that's something that's helping organisations take really great steps towards net zero in a very measured, verifiable way. That has been really taken on by organisations, not just in the UK, but pan-sector in the UK and globally. So we're seeing great progress there. Great progress too on the work that we're doing around supply chains and for internal audit. This is something that organisations really want to see from us. So that's a big growth focus for BSI. And the final point that I wanted to raise, because it's something, again, we've talked about before in this room, was around AMR, antimicrobial resistance. So we've talked before about some of the work that we've been doing. Now I can say that we have a certification scheme for antimicrobial resistance. That is helping organisations ensure that antibiotic manufacturing wastewater doesn't contribute to the growing antibiotic resistance issue that we have. So that's really safeguarding the efficacy of life-saving medication. Now we have 60 products that have been certified in 15 countries, and we've got 6 national health services, including our own, that have said to anything that we procure has got to be certified to this standard. So that is making an enormous impact potentially on one of the world's top 10 big health issues. So huge progress there. And then my final block is around investment, because there's a lot that we delivered in 2024, and this was a subject that we've talked about at every kind of AGM, and we will continue to talk about it, but we completed our foundational IT transformation programme. Thank you to Phil Fitzmaurice, who's sitting up front here, our CIO, and the team there. We are continuing to standardise and simplify core processes, a lot of great focus, particularly on our financial processes. And our Deputy CFO, Amanda Radford, is sitting up here too, and a lot of credit to the finance team for really driving that forward, which is fantastic. We've upgraded our customer relationship management system, something that's called a CRM system. Many of you will know that that is a foundation for a kind of a digital business. So really impressive work led by our Chief Commercial Officer and Tony Egerton and team. So great work done there. And I'd be very remiss, particularly in this audience, if I didn't talk about the fact that we continue to invest in the international collaborative effort towards smart standards. And smart standards are these digitally enabled standards that are machine applicable, readable, transferable. Same vein, we've started to really pick up the investment on what we're calling our next generation of digital products, including digital certification, testing, and audit. And our Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer, Jonathan Chikhil-Mangan, is sitting up front here, together with Manuela Gazard, who leads regulatory services. A lot of work happening there in particular, as we're really starting to kind of push the boundaries. So we're making a little bit of a shift from just investing in the back-end systems to really thinking about the propositions for the future, where we absolutely want to lead the industry. So lots of great progress. If I talk about financial performance now, I'm not going to go into enormous detail. You've all got access to our annual report, which is very kind of worthwhile a read. But I wanted to just pick out a couple of key numbers to give you a sense of the progress that we are making. So on the left-hand side there, you'll see revenue. And you can see that our revenue increased 7% on what we call a constant currency basis. So that means that we strip out the effect of foreign exchange, and it allows us to do a real kind of apples to apples comparison. So 7% growth. If FX was included, and you'll see this in our annual report, our reported growth was 4%. So FX quite a big kind of mover there in terms of kind of performance. And then on the right-hand side, I've got something called underlying operating profit. And so this shows our underlying operating profit before and after transformation investments. And it also excludes a non-cash impairment charge that we took of 19.6 million, which is related to lower than expected performance in our consulting services division. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But you can see before that charge and our investment in transformation, you can see our operating profit increased 12% and our margin went up by by a percentage point to 13.5%. A lot of that improvement was down to the digitisation, actually, within our regulatory services world, a project we call Shore Forward. So Manuela Gazard has been kind of leading on that. And also within our knowledge solutions space, real improvement led by Neil Musk, who's sitting up here, and team in terms of particularly our services proposition. So some fantastic kind of improvement there that improved our performance. And then in that little box kind of underneath on the right-hand side, quite an important thing there around net assets, because the group maintains a really strong balance sheet. We've continued to make improvements on working capital management, significant reduction in our debtor days. We've maintained a surplus on our defined benefit pension scheme, and so the group doesn't have any debt gearing, no material non-trading liabilities that require ongoing cash remediation. So all in all, a very healthy kind of balance sheet for the organisation, which is super important in terms of our resilience and sustainability. And then if I talk a little bit more about revenue, and I'm going to break this down by our 4 operating divisions. So we've got knowledge solutions, assurance services, regulatory services, and consulting services. And I just want to touch very briefly on them in terms of their growth last year and where that growth was coming from. So I'm going to start with the one that probably means most to you in the room, and that's knowledge solutions. This is the division, obviously, where we help shape standards at a national, regional, international level. We share and sell those standards, provide standardization services and technical assistance projects kind of globally. Those are the various things that we do. But our primary objective is absolutely to make sure that our UK stakeholders can easily access relevant standards needed to operate their businesses safely, resiliently, and sustainably, and to help accelerate trust and therefore growth in new markets and new areas through standardization. So that's very much kind of at the core of what we do. And we serve about 15,000 clients in this part of our organization, both through our own direct channel, but also through distributors as well, which is important. And as you can see from the chart, Knowledge Solutions delivered a strong financial performance last year with revenues up 7% on a constant currency basis. A lot of that driven by our growth in services last year. And when we look at the topics that we were very involved in, I've mentioned a couple of them, for example, like because of DEFRA, but sustainability was a big theme, work that we've done with DEFRA on sustainable transport. We led work on Scope 3 emissions consultation for the Voluntary Carbon Markets Initiative, which is, again, extremely important in terms of what we're trying to do. So a lot of work done there. And then a lot of work also done on the digital side, very involved in AI, very involved in quantum, which is going to be a topic that we'll no doubt come back to at this meeting in years to come. And then foundational is helping the UK economy grow. As you can imagine, that is a very high government priority that we're very focused on. And so the work, like the work that I mentioned with Innovate UK and with SMEs, is absolutely vital work. If I talk about assurance services, so moving to the bottom left there, this is the part of the organisation where we assess conformity of a process. It's something that we call system certification, and it's the thing that allows a product to be trusted in a supply chain or by a customer. We also train a number of clients in this part of the organisation. We've got about 50,000 clients globally here, so it's a very globally dispersed organisation, although our heart is very much in the UK. And 2024 was a really strong performance again from the assurance division, largely driven by that system certification work and great focus on supply chain, internal and supplier audit, and again, themes that'll come up again and again, work on sustainability and work on what we call digital trust, so making sure that organisations are using standards and are certifying to those standards to ensure that they're taking every action they can to make sure that they are safe and secure in this increasingly digital environment. This is also where we do AI training, and we saw quite really good growth actually there in 2024. So overall, revenue went up 9% in this part of the organisation, which was really, really strong. As I said, the strength really on the system certification side. Training was more challenging. It is a more discretionary spend, and so we found that a little bit more difficult, although we continue to invest in our training proposition, and actually we're now incorporating AI. We've got all sorts of learning, adaptive learning incorporated into our training courses, so they are getting stronger and stronger, and we've got new focus on the BSI Academy of Personal Qualifications too. We've now got 96 qualifications there. So again, I think a really, really strong proposition in the marketplace. Now, if I shift to the top right, I'm going to talk about regulatory services. At the end of 2023, we decided to bring our product certification world and our regulatory services world together because we felt that that was a really great opportunity for a strong and cohesive portfolio and a unified voice to the markets and to regulators. That was extremely important to us. It's also the division where we focused, as I mentioned, our AI investment. So that's been important. Now, product certification, you will know it's where we carry out testing and certification around on a range of product areas, all about consumer trust and confidence. It's where our kite mark lives. In the medical devices part of regulatory services, this is where we help about 6,500 clients globally bring medical devices to market safely. So we're a notified body in this space. And it's incredibly important, the work that we do, and there was very substantial growth last year. But I have to say 24 was also an extremely frustrating year for us, particularly in this division from a regulatory perspective, because we had some regulatory delays both in medical devices and in AI. Now, despite that, revenue growth, as you can see, was really strong, up 10% versus the year before on a constant currency basis. And in medical devices, we continue to be the market-leading notified body. We issued over 2,000 certificates last year, so that's 2,000 new innovative medical devices kind of coming to market, so really, really impressive work. In terms of product certification, we've started to really look strategically at our kite mark and everything that we have within the product certification world. And again, we're shifting quite heavily to sustainability, which is where we see a lot of client and customer demand. And the other thing that I should mention from an AI perspective, that was another area, unfortunately, where although the EU law came into effect in June of 2024, this is the EU AI Act, actually the European Union also pushed out when that regulation comes into force, and that did somewhat dampen demand from our perspective. Now, the good news is we've started this year, I think, very strong. So people do understand that this is an important world, and safe and ethical AI is vital, and this is where standards can play an incredibly important role. So we're confident that this is really a good place for us to be focusing in the medium and long term, but 24 was more challenging. And then the final piece I'll talk about is our consulting services part of the business. So this is advisory work that we do, and it's where we're working on really cutting-edge solutions with clients in some very specific areas, and that's around environment, health and safety, it's around supply chain, and it's around physical and digital supply chains, I should say, and also around cybersecurity and information resilience. Now, just to be completely clear, where we provide advisory services, we can't assure. So this is where we've got very, very strong impartiality rules, which mean that we can never kind of contravene that very important rule for us. And 2024 was super challenging, I have to say, for the global consulting industry, heavily impacted by market uncertainty and geopolitical tensions and supply chain challenges. And unfortunately, we were not immune from that general market environment. And in fact, our revenues went down year on year by 11% on a constant currency basis. Now, we did have some pockets of really strong demand, particularly around supply chain, as you might imagine. But in other areas, clients really did kind of put a dampener in terms of any sort of discretionary type projects. Now, the division still continued to deliver some fantastic, impactful work around helping organisations reduce emissions, helping them be more resilient and plan for extreme weather conditions, which obviously was also something that marked out 2024, our most extreme weather year ever. We've been doing some fantastic work on forever chemicals, or PFAS, which we expect to move along a little bit like kind of the AMR work that we've been doing. So that's very exciting and being done there. And we've done a lot of work around how do we remove modern slavery from global supply chains. So some great impactful work, but sadly the commercial results not as strong as we would have liked. So I'm nearly at the end, and I will hand over to Scott in a second. Let's see if we can move on to the next slide. Perfect. Looking ahead. From that quick overview of 24, you can see we had some challenges and some market uncertainty in 24. I'd love to say that 25 isn't looking the same, but I suspect we've got more of the same, and then some is the reality. We're dealing with a really complex set of interrelated and evolving challenges that are affecting economic conditions, regulatory environments, markets, clients, stakeholders we serve, and that's true both here in the UK and it's true globally. But although we've got challenges and we've clearly got to adapt and we've got to be agile, I am very hopeful about the way forward for two very big reasons. The first one is that in times of geopolitical uncertainty and tension, the international world of standards is a stable platform to convene, collaborate and make progress, I think, on some of the biggest issues that the world is dealing with, whether that's safe and ethical use of AI or whether that's addressing our readiness to really get on with kind of climate change and the goal of reaching kind of net zero in a sustainable way. I think standards might be the only place that we can start to have really action-oriented conversations. And so my call to action is, I think our time is now, and we really need to be making the most of that. And the second big reason that I've got a lot of confidence in the future is the world is not getting any less complicated. And the reality is that risk management, brand protection, supply chain resilience, managing our growing digital exposure, navigating these constantly changing risks and regulations, all of that underpins the need for standards, for certification, for assurance, for training. That really actually spurs our growth. So I think for those two big reasons, I feel very optimistic as we look forward. And so our job is going to be to continue to mobilize our expertise and convening power. That is incredibly important, and I think we need to be even bolder here than we have been historically. We have to continue to invest in technology so that we become deeply digital, and so we are helping our clients by delivering increasingly kind of tech-enabled services. That is going to be very important. So that next generation of services is something that we must invest in, including smart standards. And I think there we need to pick up the pace. And we can't do any of that, no matter how digital we become, without having a really engaged and motivated, high-performing team. So that investment in our people is really important going forward. So what do I hope you've taken away from my quick gamble through kind of 2025 and look forward, 2024 and look forward to 2025? We are a strong and resilient and purpose-led organisation, and we are making progress, I think, year on year. That financial performance is what is allowing us to invest in our organisation and invest in our purpose. And so much of kind of our action for the rest of the year is involved in continuing to simplify and standardise our ways of working, investing in technology and systems and skills and capabilities. All of those are hugely important. And I do want to really thank the team, BSI, that are either in the room or listening to this, because it is a hard thing that we've asked the team to do. We've asked the team to continue to deliver on the day-to-day, which they have done brilliantly, as well as transform and pivot our organisation to the future. Balancing those two things, doing those two things is very hard, and it really speaks to the quality of the BSI team that we've been able to do that in the way that we have. So thank you for that. And we're going to continue to kind of focus on areas which are the most important to our clients and stakeholders, because for us, we have to be relevant to be impactful. So that has to be our touchstone. So I'd just like to finish by saying a huge thank you to John and to the board for your continued support for BSI. It's been tremendous. To the group leadership team, many of whom are here in the room, and to our BSI colleagues across the organisation for your passion and commitment, because that is what allows us to continue to deliver in the way that we have. And thank you to our many subscribing members, committee chairs and members, and clients and stakeholders. This is a team sport, and all of you are incredibly important to the kind of delivering on the purpose that I started this presentation with. So thank you all very much indeed. And with that, back to John.
Thank you, Susan. There will be an opportunity for questions after Scott's done his presentation, and I'm going to hand over straight away to Scott Steedman, Director General of Standards, who will introduce his talk.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Let me add my welcome, and thank you to you, John and Susan, for your opening and for your summary of last year's performance, and for trailing some of those highlights in the standards world that I'm going to talk in a little more detail about. I'm going to talk about some of the remarkable results that we have delivered in our engagement and sector teams and where we're headed. But first of all, I need to set the scene really in terms of our relationship with government and flag some of the major milestones of the year. It seems like a long time ago now, but some of you might remember the 4th of July last year when we had a new government that came into power. So for the National Standards Body, that's a period of change and transition. Susan's kindly already mentioned Alexia here from DBT. So new ministers, new missions, and we had to pivot from one government to the next, new ambitions. A government driven by 5 missions, and we are supporting them particularly strongly in economic growth and clean energy. So, for example, accelerating the energy transition, carbon capture and storage. But secondly, and very rewardingly, given that it was a period of change from one government to another, we've been working with officials in the Department of Business and Trade for some time now on the update to our Memorandum of Understanding, which sets out our appointment as the National Standards Body. And we're really delighted that this was finally signed off by the new minister, by the department, and towards the end of the year. And that sets out, in a modern context, the last MOU was 2002, so before the digital world, really. It sets out how BSI and the government work together to support the national interest globally, in the European region and in the UK and the devolved nations. So the second really important document that we settled this year was the Public Policy Interest and Standardisation. This is a little-known government document that you'll find on the website, on the government website, which is a really interesting read because it sets out what is expected of BSI in our role as the National Standards Body to deliver the public policy interest, which means global. It's not just a UK focus. We are, of course, engaging beyond DBT, and that has ramped up with our team over the last few years, really strongly in DCIT. Think of AI Management Essentials, the AI Standards Hub, with the FCDO on Commonwealth Standards Network, on the Standards Partnership, critical minerals. We'll talk more about that in a minute. DEFRA on nature investments, which Susan has already mentioned. Department for Transport on future flight, autonomous vehicles, drones. Really interesting work there that our team are leading. I'd reference you to Nick Fleming for that. And DESNES on carbon capture and storage, critical minerals, nature-inclusive marine structures, an incredible breadth of topics that our wonderful team tackle in your interests. The Grenfell Inquiry Report was another milestone of 2024. Phase 2 report was published. We can talk more about it. We were reassured, it's a terrible tragedy, but we were reassured that the processes that we have in place, the governance of the National Standards Body and the work were not challenged. They were critically examined, not challenged. And we have continued to lean in to support MHCLG very strongly in the implementation of those recommendations now in the regulation of construction products and for schemes around competency and building safety. There is a huge journey here for the nation to go on, and as BSI, we stand ready in our team. I'm supported very ably by Ant Bird in that area to lean in and support the department with those ambitions. And particularly, I think, 2024 and into this year, we've seen an uptick in our work with the National Quality Infrastructure, that little-known band of brothers and sisters in the NQI, the UCAS and MPL and BSI working shoulder to shoulder to support the implementation of national policy in market shaping. Very pleased also in one of the stalls outside today, you'll see that other vital part of the quality infrastructure, trading standards. Ken Daly from Scottish Trading Standards is here manning a stand outside if you want to see him at lunchtime. So lots of really interesting work going on as a national standards body in relation to government. I thought I'd pick on some initiatives to give you a flavour of the breadth and depth of that work. As Susan pointed out in our sustainability showcase in the Houses of Parliament last week, Minister Mary Creagh gave a really impassioned speech actually about the work we're doing, and that is a fantastic achievement. We have worked to find a way to support DEFRA for around about 6-7 years, and finally we're now engaged in cleaning up the whole array of standards that support our natural environment, supporting landowners and investors and agricultural industry in the UK by creating these core principles for nature investments. So really astonishing piece of work there, which historically I don't think BSI would have been engaged in, trying to support the country. And that's been promoted also by the Welsh and Scottish governments. And we're leading work on a biodiversity net gain standard, which is supporting business in the process of implementing biodiversity net gain. So a lot of diversity in all that work, if you'll pardon the pun. Two particular very fast-track standards, Flex 701 and 704 on nature markets, just coming out, celebrated new pieces of work using our really agile processes to show what we can do. Driverless vehicles, really interesting area. Again, it's been running for some time, if you'll pardon that expression, Milton Keynes and other areas. Flex 1886 on system aspects for remote operation. How do you test these vehicles if UK is going to bring them to market? How do we do that? So there we are working very, very quietly to support the innovation in future mobility. I wanted really to make a mention of innovation. It's a huge topic for all of us, not just in the UK, but globally, of course. And we've made fantastic strides with Innovate UK support. Starting some years ago, building up to a partnership. Martin McKirk, I think, is here in the audience, so thank you for coming. Bringing the innovation community together with Innovate UK, we held an amazing day on the 14th of November last year with over 170 people. And we've launched a LinkedIn group for innovation managers to give them exposure to the use of standards to accelerate innovation, really vital part of our work. Innovate UK is also supported through its business growth toolkit for small businesses, a better understanding of the use of standards for innovation and to provide SMEs interested in startups with access to standards to accelerate their journey to market. And if you need a really simple example around that in innovation management, which is now an ISO standard, the idea that a startup has lots of ideas. Ideas are not the problem. The problem is finding out which idea is going to get you to market and not wasting your time with all the others. So I know we trot out that phrase, fail fast, but the problem is actually too many ideas to fail. So can we streamline that? And that's what innovation management is all about. We've also launched a very successful program recently, growing in success, I should say, with the Federation of Small Business, the sector focus to provide access to standards for SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. And we're seeing now over 200 of those micro enterprises signed up to a kind of all-you-can-eat package for standards. I don't really recommend you eat them, but you could try using them instead. Europe is a really important part of our day-to-day business-as-usual activity in the policy team. We are a full member of the European Standard System, as you know, which we negotiated on your behalf in the years following the Brexit referendum, and we continue to play a full part in the European system, the three European standards organisations, the ESOs. But although it's a really important part of our international visibility and influence, it does require a lot of attention from my team and a constant intervention at policy level and through our own bilateral relations with our counterparts in the European region. We work very closely with a number of countries in the system to try and ensure that we stay on track. Even this morning, there's some pretty dynamic news floating about at policy level. So this thing goes on day to day, and we've got some really key people in the team who keep an eye on that. Three big issues, I think, dominated our activity in the last year. One is the trend towards access to harmonised standards, so standards that are supporting European regulation. There's a regulation 1049 on accessibility of information, and trying to resolve that in the public interest that provides a way for people who have a genuine interest in accessing standards to see that in some format. Secondly, it's a period where Regulation 1025, unlike the UK, Europe has a standardisation regulation which sets out the role of the ESOs, and that is coming up for revision. The Omnibus is a simplification package, and so all these are kind of colliding within the European space as we jostle for position about the role of stakeholders and multi-stakeholder initiatives to develop standards in the European context. European Commission definitely has been leaning in leaning in to put pressure on experts like you, pressurising not just the UK, but other countries, demanding to know which experts are writing which standards and all sorts. There's a lot of argy-bargy in that area that we need to navigate with the European Commission. And the relationship, I'd have to say, is not as good as it has been in the past, and we need to fix that. In terms of individuals, I continue to sit on the CEN board. We take every opportunity to ensure that BSI is present in every possible part of the European governance structure. So particular thanks to my colleague Amanda Richardson, who has been loyally standing on the CENELEC board, and really delighted that David Bell, our Director of Standards Policy, who's sitting over here, we nominated him as Vice President Finance for CENELEC, the electrotechnical body, and that's been accepted without challenge. That's a fantastic position, because after Brexit we had to accept that, I had to accept on your behalf, that we wouldn't force a vice president role until some years had passed. And David is the first to step up again with a UK vice president at European level. So well done, David. That's going to be really helpful to our interests. And also, just to call out that other third body, ETSI, Telecoms, where Alice Gazassian-Brown chairs the ETSI National Standards Organisations group. And Alice is doing an amazing job in that other very important but little discussed European body. Just turning to international reach and impact globally, I've picked out 4 areas, 4 buckets of work that we ought to perhaps highlight. One is ISO and IEC generally. IEC was the big show in town last year when we hosted the IEC annual meeting in Edinburgh, BSI's largest ever event. 1,500 people, 9 days of events, 250 meetings, unbelievable. Jess Penny, who's here today, organised that. And we heard this morning, actually, just this morning, that we've been shortlisted, Susan, for the best sustainable event for that. So let's hope that comes together. We sit on the top-level boards of ISO and IEC. I do that. We also had many of the advisory groups, and colleagues like Julie Gordon, David Bell again, and Oliver Haitley have done sterling work behind the scenes to keep those influence going. Globally, I'd love to call out the Commonwealth Standards Network. That was an idea we launched in 2018 by the then Prime Minister at CHOGM. Phase 3 has been completed, and David Lammy, Foreign Secretary, announced Phase 4 at the CHOGM meeting in Samoa. So the profile of our initiative around the Commonwealth really goes from strength to strength, and we really hope that despite the pressures that are coming on funding with cross-government, that the work that the FCDO is doing in Standards Partnership and Commonwealth Standards continues, because it's of huge benefit to UK industry, consumers, but also to our ambitions in international sustainable development. I say that Ben Headley and Peter Sissons in particular have championed all of that work, and the relationships that we have with regional standards partnerships and the Caribbean, Africa, Pacific, national quality policy and development in Kenya and Nigeria, and our relationships with other NSBs, our counterpart bodies in this network in which we are working with China and the US in particular, who've changed their leadership in the NSB in the last year, and new MOUs with Korea and China and Vietnam. All of these really important about building our reputation and influence in these different areas. And fourthly, the ITU. Let's not neglect this really rather crucial third pillar of international standardization. The ITU, the telecoms body, a UN agency body. We support DCIT in that area, and Sahar Danesh has done great work for that. Sustainability at the heart of everything we do. Some really amazing work here that I hope you would celebrate. The London Declaration, which we kicked off in London, obviously, in 2021, when we hosted the ISO GA. We've done some great work to really push the community and ourselves along that journey, completing our own assessment of 4,500 of our own BS standards, introducing climate requirements. Amanda Richardson persevered within the technical board in ISO to introduce the climate requirement to all ISO management system standards. So there's one person working in one committee in the technical management board of ISO, introducing one paragraph in every management system standard about climate action, and it will ripple through every use of that standard around the world. An amazing kind of achievement. 90% of committees are now in the UK now aware of the London Declaration, and we've completed that big assessment. So lots of great work there. The net zero guidelines, Susan mentioned that, another initiative from BSI, which we announced at COP26 and launched at COP27. We've worked with the national standards bodies from Brazil and Canada to develop a new set of principles to guide their implementation. That was launched at COP29 last year in 24. And at Climate Action Week, we announced the development of this independently verifiable net zero standard, which will be launched after COP30. I would have loved to say at COP30, but I think, Emily, I don't think we're quite going to make it. So Emily Faint really gets a lot of credit for pushing that through. And also, really exciting news here in the world of finance. This idea that the UK can do leading work in sustainable finance is absolutely pivotal. And we've secured work, Emily Faint led that, from the IFRS, you'll all know the IFRS, to reference two of the major international ISO standards that we've been leading, the Net Zero Standard and the Transition Planning for Financial Institutions Standard, that the IFRS will reference those as part of their guidance. That's an extraordinary step forward in terms of our influence at global level. And I'd like to credit Dan van der Vecken, who's sitting over there with that work. Thank you, Dan, very much. He has done a lot to get our support from the IFRS Foundation, the Bank of England, European Commission, and global financial regulators in that space. It's really very exciting indeed. Can't pass the AGM without talking about digital transformation. I've mentioned the AI Essentials Toolkit, which was a DCIT project where we worked very much, some of you will remember Cyber Essentials years ago, AI Essentials, same idea, but they have indeed, through our work, integrated ISO IEC 42001 into that. So that's a great step forward. The Joint Technical Committee that we announced last year, which we secured for the UK, where we're investing in that secretariat, will position the UK at the leading edge of quantum standardization for the future in perpetuity. So another huge success there. NPL, we work with closely on quantum. For the committee members, the journey towards online standards development is really vital. We call that OSD. And that's now rolled out mandatory across all our committees. And it will then provide the platform and the experience for the smart standards rollout, which will follow. I chair the Joint Technical Committee, the Joint Standing Committee of ISO and IEC for the implementation and the rollout of the new single delivery unit on smart standards. And that is going to bring all of the advice together around the user group, what we call downstream, the host group, that's the midstream, that's maybe us, and upstream, the standards makers, that's you, so that we can integrate the whole rollout of digital transformation. Just to say before I close, huge thank you. I do this, I know, every year, but I really stand before you and say thank you, really, bottom of my heart, huge thanks to all of you who help us do this, particularly the committee members and chairs, all 14,000 of you. It's a huge engine, and I don't think, when I tell people today, you're working on 7,000 standards at any one time. Did you know that? We published 2,750 standards, new and revised standards last year. Did you know that? I mean, it's an extraordinary engine that we are driving. We lead 175 European and international secretariats from this country, and we're representing all parts of society in that. I'd say we're making good progress. We're nowhere near where we need to be in terms of diversity and renewal and refreshment, and we spend a lot of time talking to our chairs about succession, but we know that women now make up 26% of our committee members and 18% of chair applications. So we're really on a bit of a journey here. So thank you all very much for that. In closing, I just wanted to say and return to my opening remarks about the three core documents, the Royal Charter, the MOU, and the Public Policy Interest in Standardisation. We are a public interest organisation, and that's very clearly set out. And I think that brings all of us together in the BSI group, wherever we're sitting, in RS or in regulatory services or consulting or assurance or standards or policy or in the board or SBSC. It's that feeling that we're here in the public interest. And we can't do it without you, the members. So thank you again for turning up today. And what drives me, I think, and many of my colleagues every day is this simple thought that I leave with you on the screen, that something in everything we do is for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Now we're able to take any questions, and as we do, I'll call on my board and BSI colleagues to assist with answers as needed. You have been warned. For those in the room, please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. Anyone attending the meeting is eligible to ask a question. Please clearly state your name and organisation when asking a question, and I'll also read out the questions received via Teams. I'm going to look in the room first. Gentleman down here, and then the lady next to him.
Richard Forbes, University of Surrey. This is not so much a question as a comment. It's been known in my subject area for tens of years that the definition of voltage in the international standard is not scientifically correct, in the sense that it does not describe the quantity voltage that is measured by measurement laboratories. That is one of a number of tidy-ups. I would strongly urge BSI to look at these very basic scientific things, because there's a lot of tidying up that, in my view, needs to be done.
Thank you very much indeed. Scott, comment.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much for joining and for your question. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we would work on with NPL, because NPL, National Metrology Institute, our sister organisation in the quality infrastructure, and there we are working on scientific definitions, which our standards makers can incorporate into standards. But I shall take it away, Richard, and see what we can do. Thank you very much.
If you wouldn't mind passing the microphone to your right, we'll save the runners running.
Thank you, John, and thank you, first of all, to Susan and Scott for really upbeat presentations. I think it's brilliant. But at the heart of standards and the success of standards are the technical committees that write them. I was in Edinburgh and listened to Princess Anne talking about, and one of the things she raised, which, Scott, you did touch on, but it's still an issue, is the number of women on technical committees, particularly women on technical committees where they're looking at things that women essentially are the key users of. But it's not just women on technical committees. This morning we had a presentation about CPIN. The consumers are really important being on technical committees, and in my sector, building, we don't really have any consumers on our technical committees, or at least very few, which is not good. Standard users are useful on technical committees, again, difficult to get them. And then but it's not just that. In the recent construction product review,
to turn this into a question, if you don't mind.
I'm getting there. Let me just get there. They talk. One of the questions that government put to BSI was how can government and BSI engage in the future. So I'm really kind of wondering whether government can help us get more committee members, because we need that next generation of committee members, not just women, not just consumers, not just users, but government as well. How can we get those elements together for the future and keeping standards as being, the great thing they are at the moment?
Right. We all agree with you. Scott will answer more fully.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such a great question. So let me put this to you. We think that we have around 14,000 standards. I believe that for this country, at this point in our history, we need at least 20,000 committee members. I think we are light by 50%. So if we took an ambition on ourselves to say we need to up the number of committee members that we have, and then we think about how we do that, where do we find them, how do we build the idea of this extraordinary hidden part of the UK landscape into professional development. So students are told about it. It's built in that employers think we should give time to this, not just to intellectual property, but to standards work. Maybe we'll do better. But I absolutely agree with you. We need more committee members, and we need to attract them from all walks of life. Thank you.
It is a focus for campaigning. I'm going to come to this gentleman here in the second row first. But if you can show this thing that's on my screen. I've got here, if the balance sheet is so strong, why are BSI growth expectations for 2025 so high, given trade uncertainty? The two things, there's a confusion here. The balance sheet is strong because of things we've done in the past. The expectations for 2025, the turnover we have is in a way a proxy for the relevance of the services we provide to our customers. And it's not a massive target. We don't say we've got to double this. We say, what do we think is going to happen given where we are with our clients? So it's just what we expect our clients to buy because we continue to grow even in times of great stress through COVID, through financial crises. The relevance of our services is proven time and time again and continues to develop. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. So my name is Umar Farouk, and I'm representing Parker Hannafin from West Yorkshire. So I am part of a couple of committees as well on ISO standards. My question is regarding the PFAS standard, which one of you mentioned. So this will be one of the big thing for as a UK manufacturer. We will be required to produce products which are PFAS free. And my question is how BSI is working with the European standards or the ISO to have that transition in a harmonious manner, because we sell products all across the globe. So any comment on that aspect, please?
Good. Scott,
Thank
this
you.
is coming your way again.
Yeah, we work as closely as we can. It's much easier for us to work with the UK government around the implementation of any regulatory requirements that would involve PFAS. European level, similarly, there will be discussion between the European standards bodies and the European Commission around the introduction of regulations for manufacturers, transition periods and so on for PFAS. And in the ISO community, what we're trying to do is ensure that the standards that are used globally, including in Europe and the UK, because it's international first, European second, national third, are all identical to try and simplify it for you. So the answer is we try to engineer this as a system. And we can do that best in the UK, but we try to support it globally.
Let's go to the lady, just the gentleman behind, and then the lady, and then I'm going to come to you, well, blimey, then to you, and then I'll have to stop if I can.
Good afternoon. Peter Greenwood from High Speed 2 Limited. We heard this morning that the pace of technology, particularly AI, is increasing. What is BSI and other national standards bodies doing to increase the pace of standards development and standards maintenance to match the pace of innovation?
Well, may I? It's such a great question. Thank you so much. Firstly, I'll throw out a line which says that there is no technology without standards. So the standards are happening. It's just a question of where they're happening. We want them to happen within a governed formal system because it's kind of level playing field and access for everybody. And so we are moving as fast as we can, actually, to exploit the use of AI in standards making processes itself. And we have innovated and experimented with that. One has to be extremely careful using AI in standards making because it makes mistakes, it invents things, and we need our committee members to verify the output. So we're at that stage of exploring how we can accelerate to support our committee members to reinvent their processes. And I talked about the upstream input to the smart standards future. That will include AI tools to do that. And then we're using AI tools downstream to help industries like HS2 to extract what they need from standards and regulations and guidance in a much easier way. So as an engineer, you don't have to read 10,000 documents. Your AI tools will scan it for you and extract that information. So these are the innovations that are going on today.
Could you pass the microphone to your left and to your left afterwards?
Thank you. My name is Alfa Shahid, and I'm from a local authority leading on climate adaptation. My question is actually very relevant to the question just asked. Climate change and resilience, it's fast pacing, and so is AI. So I was also wondering if there is anything done to integrate artificial intelligence into building standards for climate resilience. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a slightly similar answer, but let me explore the area. Susan referred to our smart standards journey. We're on the cusp now piloting in Norway and Sweden initially, smart standards. These are fragmented standards, and Julie Gordon's just entered the room over there. She can explain it better than I can. But the idea, we don't have a catalogue of standards anymore, clip binders on the shelf. We have thousands of fragments, digital fragments, sitting in a data warehouse in my head. And then you can access the fragments you need with the algorithms you choose. So we see this is transformational, and people have said to me it's the biggest transformation in business information for industry for 50 years. So we're on the cusp of that, and your advice as to how you want to use that information would be very helpful as we shape the products that you need to extract the information you want and build it into your other content. So I think it's a very fast-moving area, and you're very welcome to join the conversation.
Perhaps you can grab Scott or one of his colleagues afterwards and pass the microphone to your left again, please.
Hello, thank you very much for the chance to ask a question. My apologies. I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. My name is Ank. I run a small organisation in the UK. We started specialising in unmanned aviation. We implemented ISO 31000. It was a voluntary process. That is in addition to any safety management systems that are recommended by the CAA. We're looking at becoming one of the first recognised assessment entities based right next to Heathrow Airport. As a small organisation, it's relatively difficult for us to find the funds to implement standards and certify ourselves. We are looking at manufacturing our very first drone by the end of next year. Hopefully it's going to be a commercial prospect. My question is, as a small organisation, how can I make the most of BSI and relating standards? And also, how can I join is it possible to join the committee as a small organisation?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
You're very welcome. I mean, firstly, you're here, so that's good news. And you're right in the front, so that's even better news. So, yes, well, we're doing all sorts of work to make sure that startups, scale-ups, SMEs have access. One of the biggest problems that you've mentioned is discoverability. You don't even know what's there. So we have trialled, and we have out today, we already have this now, I mentioned it, I think, through the FSB, an all-you-can-eat product where just for a few, cheaper than coffee, you can see all the standards you want, and that's part of the journey. So providing access to standards for us is the most important thing that we can think of to help you find the information you need. And then I say, listen, this is part of your business model. You need to integrate the information you have. So joining us as a subscribing member, for example, might be the right thing to do.
Okay.
Sorry, is that the Federation of Small Businesses?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Can you pass that along to the gentleman behind, and then I can do one more because I'm running out of time, I'm afraid. Yes, we'll come down to you. Yeah. Please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Michael Walker. I'm from a company called Mycardium. We are BSI members. I'd like to talk about acceleration of innovation to market and your impact on that. So given BSI's leading position, both in health tech standards and as a preeminent notified body, how do you see the impact on SMEs in fast-moving environments like AI in health of punitively high-cost, dedicated, expedited programs with prices that are more suited to global companies and process and delivery which are at best a lot slower than might be reasonably expected, given that high cost? Purely as an example, the delays in internal quality checks that mean that certificates can take up to 12 weeks to deliver post a successful audit and or review. So what steps, if any, will you take to align costs and performance and deliver services which are more supportive of the UK's innovation base?
I'm going to ask Manuela Gazard to answer this.
Shall I take that? And actually, I'll start, and then you guys need to talk.
If you pass the microphone forward, I'm going to pass to this gentleman in the front.
But we've got Manuela, who's our president of our regulatory services world, and it's a great point, and those are issues that I think the industry is absolutely kind of grappling with in terms of how we address that. Quite a lot of how we operate is prescribed for us in terms of kind of the regulatory bodies that we work with. But we are also trying very hard to kind of innovate and find new ways to bring innovative new things from small organisations to market much, much quicker. So that's actually a big area of focus for us and the industry more broadly. But I think Manuela might want to talk about that in a little bit of detail.
I'm getting you a mic, Manuela. So thanks, Olivia. No, Olivia. Leave that there. Leave that, please. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for... Not on. Thank you for the question, Manuela Gazard, Head Up Regulatory Services. So, yeah, your point is taken in terms of access. So we're a bit caught between a rock and a hard place because we have to treat everyone the same, that is in the regulation. So we haven't got the freedom to give advantages to smaller organizations or bigger organizations. We are, in that sense, like a passport office. That said, it is appreciated by the EU that the pathway at the moment is too complex and it takes too long. There was a motion that was submitted in December by 2 European countries to look at an innovative pathway. And I'm actually really pleased to say that we are, as BSI, on the working committee. And we believe that we have got a pathway that we can suggest under the current regulation to accelerate and to make that pathway to the market for innovative products and smaller organization much quicker. So your point is taken. I totally agree with that. And hopefully over the next couple of months, we will convince the EU to go down that pathway. So that next Adrian, I can import it.
This gentleman down here now, that's our last question, I'm afraid.
It's not on. Right. Thank you. Hello, my name is Roger Furman, newly appointed chair of CH173 Assistive Products for Persons with Disability. Really quick question. Would it be possible to ensure that the BSI website and all downloadable documents meet the highest standards, either WCAG and others, and for instance the PDF files are accessible PDFs, for instance? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for the question and for highlighting that very important issue. And Neil Musk is sitting right behind you, and he will make sure that happens.
He will speak to you after this meeting. I'm going to have to close the questions now. I'm sorry, we've just run out of time. If you haven't had your question asked, please find one of us on the board or in the team and ask, and we'll continue the conversation. But we now need to proceed to the formal business of the meeting, and I'll take as read the notice of the meeting sent to all members dated the 17th of April 2025. Voting on each resolution will be carried out by way of a poll. At the end of the poll votes will be added to the proxy votes already received to get to the final voting position, and the results will be published on BSI's website within the next 24 hours. Before we move to the poll, there are 2 items of special business to be discussed, and I'll now hand over briefly to Susan, who will provide some background information about the special business proposed for the meeting, Resolution 6.
Thank you, John. So Resolution 6 proposes to increase the fees payable to the chairman and the non-executive directors in line with the average salary increases for BSI's wider UK workforce. Now, the ability of BSI to continue to operate successfully depends in no small part on the collective strength of the board and the ability of the individual directors. And our directors engage with and support the business throughout the year, in addition to their work at board meetings. Our board plays a vital role in driving the group's performance and overseeing the organisational culture in which all of our employees can thrive and deliver against BSI's purpose. So the proposed increases for the chairman and the non-executive directors is 3%, and that aligns to the 2025 increases for BSI's wider UK workforce, and the resulting chairman and non-executive director fees benchmark in the lower half of the FTSE 250 listed peers. So the board recommends the proposed fee increases for members' approval. Thank you, and I'm going to pass back to John.
Thank you very much, Susan. Now then, I can also report that a member, Dr. Hugh Pratt, has requested to include an item in special business in the AGM. The wording of his item is now being shown on the screen, and I'd like to invite Dr. Pratt to present to the meeting this item. Hugh, are you there? We'll give you a microphone, and good, please.
Well, good afternoon to you. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I don't know if I really need to speak to this or it's just common sense. My name is, but I will speak to it a little bit so you understand why you're asking to vote on it. My name's Dr. Pratt. I'm one of your typical committee members, which we all hear about. And for my background, TC36, which is insulators, goes on power lines and things. As rapporteur, TC64, UK expert on fibrillation. So if you've got a pacemaker, unfortunately, or if you had a cardiac arrest or something like that, I would have had a hand in making sure you were revived but not killed. And then TC85, I'm a UK expert on tasers, which, again, our police force use. And you'd be interested to know that a policeman, if he brandishes a taser, 85% of the villains give up. Isn't that good? And a huge number of people aren't shot because in America, for instance, they have a choice of shooting people or using a taser. Now, if you've got a 6'6" person coming towards you on drugs and with a nasty weapon, what are you going to do? You want to stop them before they end your life. So a taser is a very useful choice between that and a 38. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm calling you to ask BSI to comply with the IEC regulations. I'm glad to see that 83.5 million of your income was from our standard sector. Remember, you can make lots of money because the committee members are unpaid. In fact, most of them travel around the world on behalf of BSI, as you would know, paying their own way. So just imagine a business model. You have people working for you, don't pay them anything. I mean, isn't that great? And then you take all their ideas. I mean, it's a wonderful business model. I'm very pleased it's working for you, 83.5 million. But I call on the BSI to give them some civil rights. If you've got people working for you, you can't abuse them. You can't misuse them. It's not allowed. That's a form of slavery. We don't allow that. Naughty. So we call on the BSI to provide civil rights. By way of example, you may know that BSI sends people from the UK to represent them as members in the IEC. And the IEC is not run by the British. We try and help run it properly, but it has its own rules. And all the member countries send along members, and they must follow IEC rules. And there are specific things that must be done. So when we're sent out, I'm not a politician, I'm an engineer. So we go out fighting on the behalf of the UK, making sure things are safe for UK people, but we got to obey, because we play cricket, don't we? We got to obey the IEC rules as well. So we need to go out and obey the IEC rules. So we go out there on BSI's behalf, following written rules, and the IEC make decisions at the plenaries. Those are the big meetings where the main committees meet. They make decisions, and they ask members to do certain things. But the BSI overruled the decision made by the plenary, and so that's why I'm here calling on the BSI to comply with IEC regulations and rules. And unfortunately, I discovered that some foreign plenary members had breached IEC rules, not delivered timely documents, destroyed or deleted UK documents from the plenary website, published defamatory remarks. I pointed out with the IEC secretary that this is naughty, and what we're going to do about it. The BSI did not support. So I call on the BSI to support IEC regulations. Now, then without the authority of the TC85, the committee, TC85 chair and committee, contacted the BSI, met with the BSI. And so the BSI breached the IEC complaints handling process. So I'm calling on the BSI to comply with IEC rules and regulations. So the problem is that the BSI has these committee members, but doesn't give them the normal civil rights. So if there's evidence provided against a person, that should be made available. There should be an appeal process. Our customers of BSI have an appeal process. There's a way of dealing with between committees when there are dodgy issues going on. But if a committee member comes along and says, this is naughty, you need to deal with it, You need to deal with it straightforwardly in an open and clear manner. There is no process. So what I'm calling on and asking you is, say, let's do two things. If we want to play in the IEC pool, we've got to follow IEC rules and comply with them. Otherwise, when you put one of our UK men or women out there to do something, they're going to be on unknown ground. If the IEC make decisions, we need to comply with them. And then finally, these unpaid workers need to have some basic civil rights. Just know where they stand. If there's something against me, tell me. If you don't like the way I look or where I talk, then tell me. And if I think that's unfair, I should have a process where I can go along and say, please, this is not right. Can you hear me? Can you listen to me? Is there a process I can put forward my concerns? There isn't. So what I'm saying is BSI is slightly broke. I want to make it stronger so that going forward that we have more people wishing to come in because you are respected as a person, because we've given you basic right to say, I think there's something wrong. What do you want? Do you want compliant people who never got an issue? Can't our intelligence be used to make things better? So use as a resource to make standards, but also, I'm saying, give us some rights. So that's what it's about. So, as again, I call on the BSI to implement the IEC. That's a no-brainer, isn't it? Come on. And support our committee members. Well, that's a bit of a no-brainer, is it? And provide them with civil rights. So I don't know if everyone disagrees with me. I'd like to argue a point. But if they do, I'm happy to take a question. But if all agree with it, then please vote for it. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Do you want this or
I don't think. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just clarify. Hugh and I haven't met until today, but we have had two reasonably lengthy telephone calls over the last 3 months. And David Bell, sitting here, has also talked to Hugh about taking this. In essence, this is a set of complaints which would normally come up to the SPSC rather than to the AGM, because it's the SPSC which safeguards the processes and procedures that we have for committees, both nationally and internationally. And that's what's going to happen. I understand this is going to go to the chairman of the SPSC, and I will talk to him personally and follow it through. So that's how we're going to deal with it through the normal course events. Does anybody else have anything to say on this matter? Okay, thank you very much indeed. So those of you who are eligible to vote at the AGM should have been given a poll card. If anyone is eligible to vote has not given a poll card, could you please raise your hand? If you've already returned a completed proxy card, there is no need to complete a further poll card. Does anybody need a poll card? Thank you very much. Two over here. Anybody not got one that needs one? Okay, will you please then complete and sign the poll card and raise your hand, and we'll collect the card from you. Thank you. In addition to the votes of the members present, we'll add the votes of those who've already submitted proxy cards, and we'll post the results on our website within the next 24 hours. Have you got these back now? I don't want to close the meeting before we've got them. Actually, we'll include them anyway. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the formal business of this annual general meeting. Before closing, I can update you regarding the membership subscription rates. As is always the case, the board carefully considers the rationale for any proposed increase to members' subscriptions, and in order to keep the overall proposition as strong as possible for all members, the board has approved a 3.4% price increase across all membership bands in line with UK inflation rates. It is worth noting that this follows a period of a number of years when increases have been below the rate of inflation, and also when in certain years no rate increases have been applied for smaller companies. Price rises will affect new members from June 2025 and renewals from August 2025. As required by our bylaws, we will also circulate these rates for your information. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending and for your continued support for the BSI. I declare the 2025 AGM closed and invite you to join us for lunch with the reminder that there are 2 stations outside. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.